also took some time to like talk about Edmund and his affair with Edmund's mother.
Right, that inappropriate conversation to have when your son is standing there. And just so you know, it is actually pronounced Gloucester. I'm not saying it incorrectly.
Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. Everybody thinks I'm saying it's like Gloucester or Gloucester or something. It's like Worcestershire sauce. Gloucester.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, so it's Kent and Gloucester talking about the kingdom, right, and all of the events that are occurring, and then also about Edmund being a bastard. Now, why is that mentioned now? It's an element of the plot because it's a main driving force to explain the conflict that exists between Gloucester and his two sons, which is a nice parallel to have between Lear and his three daughters. Okay, so you're going to see that there is a number of character foils. Okay, and then something that happens in the main plot is echoed then in this subplot. So we're looking at family dynamics, relationships between parents and children, and you see it in the main plot with Lear and his daughters, also in the subplot with Gloucester and his sons. Okay. How do you think that Edmund must be feeling at this moment? So remember, this is in regards to his father talking about the sport in which he was made, being a bastard child, which would mean, do you know what that means? If he was a bastard at this point in time, he would be entitled, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sabrina. Like his parents were unmarried when he was conceived?
Right. And so what that actually would do to him, it would be, well, publicly humiliating, especially when your father's talking about you like this. But what would affect him most is that he would not be entitled to any lands, money, or position that could be bequeathed to him from his father. So his father, Gloucester, would be passing along, like I said, title, land, money, etc., all of his status onto Edgar, his legitimate son, where his illegitimate son, Edmund, would have nothing. Now, obviously, that's not a fair system to grow up in. So you can imagine here, let's see what Marco is saying. Edmund must be feeling pretty bad about his birth father. Yes. Talking about his, I'm not sure what that is, his existing and referring to his mother as an object for intercourse. Yes, so again, pretty humiliating, especially when you're in the royal court. He's been gone for 9 years, now he comes back, and you can imagine that he probably would want to start somehow fresh in this new opportunity he has in the kingdom. We don't know why he left for 9 years. I'm assuming probably because his father treated him differently than his legitimate son. And so there's obviously a dynamic that we're going to learn about soon. That's not a very pleasant one. Okay. Why are they seen as bastards? Okay, so quite literally because his parents were not married when he was conceived and born. That's why he would be considered a bastard child. He is not legitimate in the eyes of the law according to Elizabethan times, which I had mentioned yesterday is extremely archaic and, you know, like a social value that we don't have anymore, okay? So that is what makes him a bastard child. Okay, so what does King Lear plan to do with his kingdom? I think we talked a lot about this yesterday, so I'll just kind of recap it. He is going to divide his kingdom. And what is the test he proposes to the daughters? It's called the love contest. It's never called it specifically in the text, but that's what scholars and academics refer to it as, the love contest. So a public show of who loves him the most, which is completely superficial, and we find out ends up backfiring on him big time. Okay, so how do each of the first two daughters answer King Lear? So if you could summarize it, what are their answers? If we could summarize their responses.
Yes, I can answer that.
Please do, thank you.
Okay, so the two daughters, Gunro and Regan, answered it. Gunro goes off to say how her love for her father cannot be put into words, and goes off to say in multiple ways how her love is beyond any measurable quantity. And Regan says that she is equal to her sister in many ways, except for the fact that love falls short compared to Regan's.
Good. Okay, very good. Okay, so yes, sir, I love you more than world can wield matter. And Regan says, and fine, I am alone facilitating your dear highness's love. Absolutely. So one is at trying to outdo the other. And we come to find out that it is insincere. They don't really feel this way. All of this was done. They know it was part of a show to get what they want, which was part of the kingdom. Okay. What is Cordelia's answer, and why does she answer as she does? What does her reference to nothing suggest about the use of this motif in the rest of the play? So we know that she says, nothing, my lord, right? And that was like start off a whole thing. So why does she answer in this way? What are your thoughts? Why would she do that? What is she hoping to have happen? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I think that's an excellent response, okay? We're also going to see this idea of nothing, right? She's going to end up having nothing. He will end up being nothing. It's like a whole big nothing thing. So we're definitely going to see that repeated throughout, okay? Great. And I think that's most important that we really focus in on. Now, you don't know this yet, but I can tell you that Cordelia is genuine and sincere in her feelings, but she doesn't want to play this game with her sisters because she knows that it's all false, okay? So then we kind of have to look at this down the road. Like, why couldn't Cordelia just go along with it? Okay, well, we wouldn't have maybe much of a play if that were to happen, but it is another indicator of her character, right? That she is honest and virtuous, and so she's not going to lie. Okay, very good. Do you think that Cordelia is being cruel in refusing to play her father's game? If so, why? Is it cruel to embarrass your father in front of the royal court? Tom?
I think that from one perspective, I understand why she doesn't want to lie to her father, but to do this publicly, it's kind of cruel and humiliating, I guess.
So is she trying to teach him a lesson? What do you think?
I think she's trying to expose her sisters for being dishonest.
Okay. Okay, well, good. I mean, Ken sees right through it. So obviously there must be something already that pre-exists that they seem to know, like the good characters, the wholesome characters. Ken's one of them. He can see that the sisters are being manipulative. So there's obviously something behind that that we just don't quite know. We're not going to ever find out the background information, why they have these feelings, but we're definitely going to see what happens as a result of it. Okay, very good. How does Lear react to Cordelia's response, and how does Kent react to Lear's response?
Yes, can I answer this one?
Yes, please.
So Lear misconstrues Cordelia's refusal to display her love and affection to him as an act of betrayal. Therefore, he is beyond disappointed with his daughter. Being ruled by emotions, Lear decides to disown his daughter, and in response to Lear, Lord Kent realizes that Lear is being irrational and attempts to convince him to change his mind, but he gets banished.
Excellent answer. And this is where we start to see the origins of his rage. And he really does act out in rage oftentimes in the play, where he says, come not between the dragon and his wrath. That's probably one of the, I'd say, the third most quoted line of the play, okay? In addition to men were sin against and sinning, and then when he really like gives it to his daughters later, okay? So most certainly he reacts negatively to it because he does see it as a betrayal. So good insight into that, Nicholas. Well done. Okay. So now Kent, he does go out of his way to try to caution Lear. He's banished, but he's coming back soon. So that's it, because he's still so loyal to Lear no matter what. Okay, so how might the references to sight and blindness become important to the rest of the play? Sarah.
I think that vision and sight, they usually symbolize truth, and I feel like his unwillingness to look at the entire situation in full and see where Cordelia may be coming from causes him to be oblivious to other perspectives and what is really going on in the situation.
Very good. And we're going to see just in the next scene when we get to it that Gloucester suffers from the same problem that Lear does, the lack of foresight, also a lack of insight, and really knowing themselves, but knowing their children, which is a problem, right? If you don't know your children, and these are adult children, so you've had many years to develop a relationship with them. So it really is a lack of deep understanding within oneself. And if you can't understand oneself, how are you able to create relationships that can withstand difficulties like what happened in families, right? So we are going to see a number of these. They're like oftentimes blatant. Like in the next scene, Gloucester actually says, let's see, and he doubles it. So Shakespeare often uses doubling language where he repeats something twice just for emphasis. And then they're a little bit more subtle also. Okay. How do France and Burgundy each react to the news that Cordelia will not receive any dowry? And what does their reaction tell us about their character?
I can answer that one.
Okay, please.
Yeah. I said to the news that Cordelia will not receive any dower, Burgundy is astonished and backs out of the marriage, which shows that the inheritance and status was all he cared for. And France reacts completely differently as he says that he still wants to marry Cordelia because he loves her and loves her values, and was impressed that she was so genuine and didn't overlook her beliefs just to please her father.
Okay, excellent response. Yeah, he looks at her, he's like, girl, you are the dowry. Okay, so he can recognize her goodness. Yes, absolutely. So he actually cares for her. He cares for her values, whereas Ali said and Marco says that he really just, Burgundy is looking for status, money, opportunity. Okay, so it's probably better that she ends up with France anyway. What does Cordelia mean when she says to her sisters, I know what you are? What do the sisters say about their father near the end of the scene? So when she says, I know what you are, what does that mean? I mean, we don't have to translate that from Shakespearean English into English, and Shakespearean English is actually still considered modern English, FYI. It's not Old English, that's Chaucer, and that sounds like a completely different language. So what does she mean by that?
Like, she knows that they're manipulative and that they want to strip him from their power, and that's exactly what they're planning to do.
Okay, excellent. So Say says she learns on the surface of their conspiracy to dethrone the king. I don't know if she necessarily knows that right now, but she definitely doesn't have a good feeling about their intentions. And they are absolutely conniving. Hold on. Great ideas popping up. Okay, so the sisters at the end of the scene speak about the sickness and the age of, I would say, their father, which is a root cause of their failure to correctly judge as he once did. So definitely they take his rational thinking, his age, into consideration. They are a little bit concerned that he's making bad decisions. Marco says she knows they're deceiving their father and to take his land. I agree. Okay, so Nicholas says, I know what you are, the theme of appearance versus reality. Okay, so Cordelia's remarks suggest that her sisters were merely pretending to gain control of the kingdom, and Cordelia creates the impression of her sister's evil nature through their need to hide their true self and pretend, further foreshadowing that unexpected events are going to occur. And this is going to be directly related to a lot of the animal imagery. So it's interesting to see how the sisters in the future will be described. One of the most famous quotes from the play, King Lear says, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child, right? And I'm sure on some level you've probably heard that from your parents before. I know I did, right? So she or he acknowledges how painful it is to have children that somehow betray you or don't appreciate you. So he definitely feels the pain from that. And we're gonna watch it slowly happen. Okay, the sisters by the end of this scene, all we know is that they're going to act together. They're going to act swiftly to take advantage of what they see is some weakness in Lear, right? They have to wonder if Dad is giving up his power, he can't be of rational mind. So that's obviously starting to emerge as another issue. Okay.
Miss?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I just joined. I was having issues with my laptop.
Okay, well, thanks for telling me. I'm going to update the attendance, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if everybody wants to get to Act 1, Scene 2. Oh, no, sorry. I want to do a boring lesson first. And then we'll get to Scene 2. Okay, I'm just going to screen share if you guys are okay with that. Please do pop it in the chat if you have any questions when I'm going over material. I mean, not in the chat. I can't see the chat. I mean with your mics. Okay, so I was thinking of keeping this for a little bit later, but then I thought, why? It's kind of going to spoil the plot in some ways, but I think it's important to read with context because then I think your understanding of the play is enhanced a little bit more if you can anticipate what's already coming. Okay, so I do apologize if you really don't want to hear this, then I don't know, maybe take a bio break for a while. Okay, so we've already talked about the characters. I've listed them easily for you. We've gone over some of these. Let's just go to the character profiles. So what I did was write a little bit of an analytical paragraph on each of them and what you can anticipate as we read the play. So we know that King Lear is an aging protagonist that thrives off of flattery and political power. His basic flaw is that he values appearances above reality, which is why he asks his daughters to express their gratitude and love for him. Although Goneril and Regan feign it, feign meaning fake or pretend. He asks, which of you, shall we say, doth love us most? That's what I refer to as the love contest, that whole scene. So Lear blindly and foolishly banishes Cordelia for not fulfilling her filial duty. I want you to monitor whether or not Lear grows as a character, because this is one of the instances where we debate year after year, every time I read it, does he really grow? Does he really come to understand? And I mean, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Does he ever see the error in his ways and become more insightful? Is he ever able to fully recover from his madness? That you'll have to judge. Lear experiences and ignores this as he realizes his weakness and insignificance in comparison to the awesome force of the natural world, and he becomes humble and makes amends with Cordelia. So we do have that to look forward to. But I think one of the most powerful things that we do tend to see, and don't forget, Shakespeare would have been writing these plays, and they would have been performed either under Queen Elizabeth's rule or under James I's rule. And that would have been a daring statement to make about kings and queens when he's performing for them. So essentially what happens around Act 3 and Act 4, when Lear has lost everything, he's destitute, he ends up in a hovel somewhere, and he finally realizes that as a king, he neglected those that needed him the most, meaning the downtrodden, the marginalized, the dispossessed, all of those people he never paid attention to, and realized that as a king, he failed, as a father, he failed, and as a man, he failed in many ways. So he has a very bitter pill to swallow, and coming to that drastic realization, I mean, would be a blow to anyone's ego, especially when you're an egomaniac. That's really difficult. So stay tuned for more development. Cordelia. Here's the thing with Cordelia. We see her now, and then we're going to see her again in Act 4. So there's a lot of stuff that happens, and she's absent for. She's characterized by devotion, kindness, beauty, and honesty. Arguably, we can see already to a fault. By refusing to take part in Lear's love contest at the beginning of the play, she established herself as virtuous and authentic. Her presence is not forgotten in the middle section of the play, as her beauty is constantly discussed in her absence. Again, one of those superficial things that women are appreciated for, not for their wit or intelligence or ability to do many other things, but of course to focus in on their beauty. She is described in religious terms, reinforcing the idea that Cordelia's love and motives are pure. Cordelia's reunion with Lear initiates the restoration of order in the kingdom and the triumph of love and forgiveness over hatred and spite. It's one of those moments that really gets you right in the gut, and how painful, but also how beautiful it is to see the two of them reconciled. Okay, I don't really want to get into any plot spoiling, but you know it's a tragedy, so there are going to be some devastating and cruel incidents that occur. Goneril and Regan. Essentially, we find out that they're villainous and spiteful. They take advantage of their aging father, and Shakespeare's audience would have been very disturbed by such aggressive women because they're aggressive in their pursuits politically. They're aggressive in their verbiage, so how they speak to each other and speak to others, in their relationships with their husbands. Well, Regan and Cornwall are kind of on the same page, but Goneril and Albany begin to slowly drift apart because Albany just can't take the treatment that Lear receives. It really upsets him. And it would be quite shocking that women could be so aggressive and so spiteful. So initially it seems that the girls learn their shrewd ways from Lear, but it's not possible to sympathize with Goneril and Regan's situation because of their heinous actions against Lear and Gloucester. Goneril and Regan are Machiavellian characters. We're going to talk about Machiavelli, unless you guys have already talked about him maybe in a history class. He famously wrote a book called The Prince, and he's known for essentially his theory is that the ends justify the means. So whatever way you need to achieve a final goal, doesn't matter how you do it, the means are justified if the end result is what you want. So if you want to have absolute power, if you have to kill a bunch of people to get there, the ends justify the means. That's what Machiavelli stands for. But it also represents maybe a method without consciousness, ruthless, politically hungry. Like Macbeth, their greedy ambition brings them great success and power. However, this evil also results in their downfall. Okay, so Gloucester. Now we're moving to the other family, the subplot family. He is a nobleman loyal to King Lear. Immediately, we learn that Gloucester is an adulterer, having fathered a bastard son, Edmund. Although the story of Gloucester and his two sons is only a subplot to the main plot, his fate is in many ways parallel to that of Lear because he too misjudges which of his children to trust. Of course he does, right? Gloucester seems weak and incompetent early in the play, particularly when he's unable to prevent Lear from being thrown out of his own home, but later he demonstrates that he also is capable of great bravery, which links to the theme of redemption and regeneration, which is ultimately why a tragedy is not supposed to leave you hopeless and feeling dreadful, because there is supposed to be regeneration. There's order has to be restored in the kingdom at the end of a tragedy, or else that's not how Shakespeare writes. So Edgar, he is the elder son and the legitimate heir. He and Edmund are, I think they say 14 moons, so basically 14 months apart, so just over a year apart. Edgar plays many different roles in the play, which makes it difficult to characterize him accurately and effectively. What we can say is that he emerges as valuing the things that I think a traditional medieval knight would value: honor, love, civic duty. Those are things that I would say represent Edgar. Initially, he does start out very gullible. He's easy to be tricked. He's foolish. He trusts Edmund, and you wouldn't typically think that the younger child would be able to take advantage of the older child. But Edgar has a quick learning curve, and he has to figure that out. Later, he assumes a disguise as a mad beggar to elude his father's men. And finally, he extends his impersonation to aid Lear and Gloucester and avenges his brother's treason. So he comes back, emerging at the end as one of the heroes. Edmund, this is a guy that you love to hate because he is just so evil. But then at the same time, you kind of maybe have some sympathy because he really doesn't have it easy. And I don't know, you might feel a little bit bad for him. He's the younger son of Gloucester, and he's a main villain in the play. He is socially ostracized because of his status, which makes us sympathetic to his situation. By nature, he's a schemer and a true Machiavellian character. He's eager to seize any opportunity, and he's willing to do anything to achieve his goals. His ambition reflects a hunger for land and power, but most importantly, a desire for recognition denied to him by his status as a bastard. His actions of treachery are not selfish. Instead, they are a vendetta against a social order that has denied him the same status as Gloucester. Unlike Gloucester, who considers the influence of fate, Edmund depends on his own initiative. And in the passage we're going to read today, it ends with his soliloquy. Now, gods stand up for bastards. So he's going to be like the bastard spokesperson because he feels like in his time, they've been so marginalized and treated so unfairly that he is going to take it in his own hands to alter his fate. Okay, and what do we know about people who think that they can change fate? They are going to be punished. He is the ultimate self-made man. He's cold, calculating. I liken him to Iago in Othello, which makes no sense to you because you haven't read it. However, unlike Iago, Edmund exhibits a rare change of heart, which begs the question, did Edmund's ability result from innate evil, or was it because he had been rejected by his society and was desperate for familial love? And then when you think of that, you're thinking, oh my God, he just really needed a hug and wanted to be part of the family. It is at the end of the play, Edmund finally shows his weakness. He's ambiguously repentant. He acknowledges the deaths of Goneril and Regan. There's a whole love triangle there. And then we find out that he plays a role in a very tragic event that you don't want to know about yet. Okay, I'll pause for a question, I'll pause for a moment for any questions or you need clarity on something. Okay. I think I'm going to leave that. Please go ahead if you have a question.
Miss?
Yes.
Was it the characters like summaries?
Yeah, kind of like a little analysis of each character, just to kind of give you an idea of what to expect as we're reading.
I see. Will it be updated when we read through it, or is it gonna stay like that?
It's pretty much, I'd say, as accurate as possible. It looks at a little bit of, like, I'm not going to go into all the changes right away, but as we read, you'll see that they do sort of change. But that is a general, I would say, general description of how they are presented.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Marco, what a clown. Who is that in reference to? There's a lot of clowns here. There's an actual clown and there's a bunch of other clowns. A number of clowns. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so the only other thing I want to do today, well, we're going to read, but after we read this soliloquy, oh, it might be clear, okay. Now, just to recap, what's a soliloquy? Just so we know the terms. Anybody know what a soliloquy is?
It's like a monologue that somebody does to themselves.
Yes, thank you. So it's like talking out loud to yourself, but keep in mind it is a play, so the audience has to know. You can't just ponder and think without saying things out loud, okay? So yes, this is an opportunity for us to be introduced to Edmund, and I'm going to, after we read this, we'll do I'll screen share again, and we will look at how we're going to analyze a quote. And this is good preparation for your quote test that we're going to have set up after Act 3, okay? So it'll follow basically the exact same format. For your test, though, I wouldn't give you anything this long. This is pretty long. I would probably, maybe like 8 to 10 lines, I would say maximum, okay? That's okay. I know there's Wi-Fi problems. It's all right. Okay, so Act 1, Scene 2. We are on page 12 for those of you who need to know. Can I have some volunteers to read?